Hello chat, today I'm returning to the video series of Misplaced reviews. Originally, I was going to do a video on 3 matches, one against Esper Midrange, one against a different Esper Midrange deck, and then one against White-Black. I decided to split them into 3 unique videos, mostly to make the info more understandable and easier to watch in smaller parts. That way you could sort of break it down match by match by match instead of watching an hour and a half of me yammering on all at once. So in these next few videos, it might be a little choppy, it might sound a bit weird, I might reference things in other videos, and that's just because I originally recorded them to be all in one video. So hope it's not too jarring, hopefully it still translates, and hopefully you enjoy it anyways. Thank you for watching. Okay, so here we have match 2, and this is the finals of the Modern Challenge. I don't know what I'm playing against. I don't remember if MTGBot told me or if somebody else told me, but it is Esper Midrange, and they do have Recruiter the Guard and a few tutor targets. Specifically, it's not even Mind Sensor. The 2 mana when it ETBs, plot a spell an opponent controls. Cards in exile and graveyards cost 2 more to cast, etc. I don't know about that until they show it to me, I think, in game 2. But it's important to note that that is the deck list they're playing, so they have a few more ways to like tutor up their cards, but they also have things like Recruiter the Guard, which are 3 mana kind of do nothings a good amount of the time, or 3 mana 1/1s. So the impact of their synergies are slightly higher, but the impact of their synergies failing is also very high. This isn't something you can necessarily assess before you realize you're in that situation against these tutor builds. But when you're facing these versions, you can sort of figure out, like, hey, my opponent's deck is really reliant on these things. Even if I spend a few, like 2 resources to slow it down, the potential that they spin these resources into like 5 is worth the 2 right now. And that's why I think that specifically the Recruiter the Guard version is the worst version against Boros, but it is very, very punishing sometimes and does actually snowball a bit more, not efficiently, but when it snowballs harder. It's harder to get out from underneath. Anyways, this hand is pretty standard. I think, again, I don't know if I know what I'm playing against. In the dark, I want to keep hands like this a lot. We have early removal. We have 2 versions of removal that are going to hit most things that you want to hit. We have 2 Ajani, which is not great, but is actually a turn 2 threat and threatens to flip and actually combos with a lot of good cards in our deck. As for what's happened in this game so far, them leading Flooded Strand kind of makes me believe they're on Boros. I don't remember if I know that they're on Black-White. If I knew that they were on Black-White, I think it is correct to put this in the graveyard. If it's Boros, it's definitely correct to put it in the graveyard. I really want to make sure that I have a plan for past turn 4. Currently, I have an idea of what I want to do up to turn 3, maybe turn 4. Depending on how my opponent responds to that, also changes a few things. So I want to sort of have a follow-up, or I want to have a plan. Just playing a Johnny and then some removal isn't going to be good enough. If they kill the first Johnny, like they just straight up kill it, and I get to get value out of the second one immediately and just put some extra creatures into play, that's very good for me. But I don't know if that's an average play out of the opponent, and I don't know if, like, even if they make that play, it puts me in a position where I'm happy or favored overall. I don't remember if I leave this. I do leave the Ragavan on top. I think this is incorrect. I guess if it's Boros, Ragavan, just don't keep it. If it's not Boros, I'm only keeping this on top, I think, if I should be dashing it. I don't think there's much reason to keep it on top if I'm not dashing it here. If I dash it and they have Fatal Push, That's not even a bad exchange. They also have to have Fatal Push. If I dash it and they have Solitude, that's a great exchange, even if they follow up with a Overlord. Now you're probably thinking, okay, well, you're playing the Ajani, and the Ajani's better against Push, and the Ajani's better against Solitude. What difference does it make? Well, the Ragavan is just not, it's just a dead card now, because I already had a play that I was going to make. There's no reason to keep it on top of my library, unless I'm going to play it this turn, because I'm unlikely to play it on turn 3. I'm unlikely to play it on turn 4, and it doesn't play into what I just said, where I want to plan for the later game. I want to have something after we play a few turns of interaction, because I'm going to be presenting threats and my opponent's going to be presenting answers, or they're going to be presenting ways to snowball. I can't dash this Ragavan on turn 3. I can't play it on turn 3 unless I want to also leave up a Galvanic Discharge. And even if I do, I still just kind of get sewered by a lot of things if they go Overlord into Flicker Wisp, right? My Ragavan and Ajani board is now not very strong, and we kind of get buried. Even a land at this point might be stronger. If it's a fetch land, I can Surveil. If it's not a land, the worst thing in my deck is a removal spell, and a removal spell I can still make use of. The best things in my deck are like Bombardment, or even a better one-drop like Guide of Souls or Ocelot Pride, or best case, like maybe even a Seasoned Pyromancer, so I can really start playing for the late game. So they had Fatal Push for the Ajani, so that's best possible for me. Overlord into Solitude, Overlord Failure, and they picked up the Solitude. So again, we're in the same spot we talked about last match, where I could play Threat plus Static Prison. I don't remember if this match was after the like another day other than the other one, but I think I make the correct play this time, and I wait. And the reason I'm waiting is because if they have Flicker Wisp, I want to hit the Overlord when they try to Flicker Wisp. Now they have Thoughtseize, so this it doesn't really matter, and they take the other Ajani. And it's funny because keeping this Ragavan on top kind of works out, but at the same time, like, I don't even dash it here, which is so crazy to me. I don't know why I wouldn't. I don't really know what I'm worried about. Like, why am I leaving up Discharge? Oh, Emperor of Bones. Their game plan lined up well into what I've done, but I think overall keeping the Ragavan is pretty bad. And if I dash the Ragavan and hit nothing, and they go 4th land, Emperor of Bones, hit Overlord, activate, I now am facing a 4/4, and they've hit 2 creatures off the Overlord. We know that they have the Solitude in their hand, so we're just likely to get buried. Leaving up the Galvanic makes sense, and drawing the Flage is obviously nice, but we're playing this game of cat and mouse where we're technically ahead, but there are so many cards in their deck that just sort of like get them out from underneath this. They're not even behind. This Flicker Wisp is just like so punishing for me, and that's not even a great play. Here, I think I'm supposed to leave this Flooded Strand on top. Again, I want to play around Emperor of Bones, and I want to deal with this Flicker Wisp now. Not because it's necessarily like a huge threat, but because I'm just going to have to do it eventually. And this is kind of silly. I think I played around Emperor of Bones the turn before, and then I chose not to now. And I'm getting very punished for doing so. I mean, it doesn't end up mattering because they're just like 3-for-1ing themselves with this Solitude. I think they could have just, honestly, they could have just waited with the Solitude. I could have played this game so much tighter, and their draw is just, I mean, this goes back to what I've said about, wow, their last card was Solitude, another white card, and they fired it off to do it. We're just up 3 cards. Like, these Static Prisons are dead, but it just doesn't matter. Like, I should be up 5 resources instead of 3. Anyways, I think the rest of this game kind of just plays out like this, and we run away with it because they 3-for-1 themselves 4 times or whatever. We're also at 35, but this is sort of what I've been getting at with their deck has a lot of fluff, and they need to have ways to sort of spin up their game plan. If they have that Overlord in play, the Flicker Wisps gain a lot of value. If they have those, if they don't pitch those Solitudes, they gain a lot of value. Can reasonably interact with my spells, like at a mana advantage. These cards gain a lot of value. And so I think it's really important to make sure that you spend your resources, even if it's sometimes bad, to make sure that they can't spin it up. This is just such a funny way this game's played out. 'Cause, yeah, they ripped Overlord here. This is crazy because they like 4-for-1 themselves twice and they've ripped out of it. Overlord into Flicker Wisp, and we do end up winning this game, and it's very funny. But this just goes to show how there's a lot of fluff in their deck and how they really rely on Overlord. And you really need to make sure you interact with it in a meaningful way a lot of the time. I mean, I think the play is obviously just Galvanic Overlord, Static Prison the Flicker Wisp. I could just Static Prison the Flicker Wisp. No, I can't jump. It's really bad to Static Prison the Overlord, obviously. I don't remember what else they picked up. I think it was... No attacks makes sense. Static Prisoning and attacking for 1 is actually pretty loose overall. Trawler is whatever. I no longer... Like, I don't have any Phalanges in my bin. Any Phalanges is just pretty strong here anyways. This is a spot where Static Prison is actually a decent card to have because it gives me energy. And we can kind of figure out that they don't really have anything. Like, I don't mind giving back the Trawler next turn, keeping the Flicker Wisp. If it puts them to 4, it makes it so any fetch in their deck makes it so that they're dead to 1 attack, but it also makes it so Bombardment kills them if they have nothing. They've hit another Flicker Wisp. I guess they had another Flicker Wisp. I don't know why they didn't. It's better to hit the Static Prison and Flicker Wisp. I don't know actually, but whatever. Yeah, like I said, we give them back the 3/1. And because they solituded our Phalanges twice, like, again, they're down these extra resources, but we're also at 35 life. If they had an extra Flicker Wisp, or if they had an extra Phalia, and they just let one of those Phalanges just sit in the graveyard for a turn, they'd be up an entire card, and I think that extra card might actually like win them the game. So we've kind of bricked off here a bit, and really the game plan is to just try and find a way to deal 4 points of damage. There are a few ways to do it. Bombardment is a big one. Flage is another big one. Just drawing a bunch of creatures and putting them into play with this Guide of Souls is a big one. The reason I'm dashing the Ragavan is because I want to just get extra energy, and the Ragavan being in play actually doesn't matter that much. It doesn't play around Thoughtseize, but like if they're Thoughtseizing my Ragavan, that's a good exchange because they're going to 2. This is where we see the Aven Interrupter, and like this play is obviously fine for us. The Aven Interrupter on this board is so useless. More importantly, the Ragavan sort of baits the spell so we can play this Ajani, which actually matters on the board. And this is, I talked about this a bit before, but Ragavan has slightly more value because you can play it at sort of instant or flash speed. This is the main deck Wrath of the Skies. Yeah. Which is just such a blowout for us. I'm pretty sure most lists only play 1. Like, this is nice, obviously. It's funny, because the Aven's gone, and somebody points this out in chat. I didn't notice it at first, and it might be a little loose in general because they have 1 card in hand. But I could have played the Ragavan, flaged the Ragavan, and then flashback the Flage and given it haste. The punish is that they could have Ephemerate for the Boggart Trawler, just to exile my graveyard, and then my Flage just kills my Ragavan for no reason. It's not likely they have it, but it is possible they could have it. We haven't seen an Ephemerate so far. And if we just wait a turn, and I see a fetch land, or I see a removal spell, or I see another creature, I can just play a game slow. I don't have to go all in here. I think that there are a lot of times where you do want to go all in, But because we're at 19 and we have at least a draw step or two, we don't need to go all in here. It would have worked out, I think, that it would have won us the game, but I just think it's super loose overall. Right, so they have to leave back the trawler here. We're still like in a really good spot. We still have like a 2 or 3 turn clock. They're just natty playing this Witch Enchanter, and we draw Bombardment, which is lethal. So if their last card was Ephemerate, I think we would have won anyways. Well, no, we wouldn't, because they would be at 4, and they would exile our graveyard. We would draw this Bombardment, and they'd be able to maybe claw back into it if we bricked a bit. It was Ephemerate, so like this is what I mean. Like, I didn't realize it was Ephemerate before, but if it was Ephemerate and we make that play, we get really sewered. And so yeah, I get immediately rewarded for holding the Flage and not killing my own creature. Obviously, I'm the greatest. So here again, I'm highlighting the Blood Moons. I don't know if I actually bring them in. Well, I talked about this before. I just want spot removal. I just want to be able to slow the game down. I don't want as many creatures. They have one main deck Wrath of the Sky, so I want to make sure that I'm playing around that a little bit. Static Prisons are pretty bad. The Ocelot Prides are pretty bad. This time I end up cutting a Voice of Victory instead of the Ragavan. I think that's reasonable on the draw. I don't want that many 2-drops. My curve is very high, and Voice of Victory actually doesn't have that high of an impact. Going into their turn 3, they have a lot of spells that really punish us. Specifically, if you play 2 mana for a Voice and they play a Thalia, we're just behind a lot of the time. And Voice of Victory on turn 3 or turn 4 is just not super impactful. Where Ragavan is very impactful. The first turn you can play it and has quite a bit of impact later. Obviously, to offset that, it is a legendary creature, so there is a bit of diminishing returns. And you don't want many of them. So, I could see cutting a Ragavan and leaving in the Voice. I could see cutting a Ragavan and leaving in a 3rd Ocelot Pride. I could see cutting the other Voice and leaving in a 3rd Ocelot Pride and just, like, not playing too many 1-drops to the board. Like, that's the game plan. I could also see not bringing in this amount of Wear Tears against them. You do want to interact with Overlord, but they have a lot of draws where they don't have Overlord, and we didn't see Relic, so it actually is just Overlord. I actually don't think they have Relic because they're playing the Aven Interrupter version, so we're actually just trying to hit Overlord with it, which is fine, but I don't think you need to board that many cards for Overlord. You can, but the times where like if this Wear Tear never hits anything, it's just so bad. Or when we draw the second Wear Tear, it's just so bad, right? So they fetch Swamp. This is another reason why I don't like Blood Moon. Obviously, like, they're trying to save life just naturally. The Blood Moon's awful. They surveilled to the top. They have another surveil in. This is a very slow draw from them. And again, we just can't punish them. We have this double Wear Tear. And we're trying to play the long game, but I don't think that we should be trying to play the long game. I'm not playing this Pyro, mostly because I think I'm worried about Bowmasters. But also, if they go like Thalia into Overlord, we're really far behind. If they have Aven Interrupter, we're also just kind of far behind afterwards. Like, putting a Pyro into play that turn and then jamming into a Aven Interrupter isn't good. The other thing is, all these cards have value in my hand. I don't actually want to discard anything to the Pyro yet. This is actually pretty good for me because it gives a lot of value to the spells that I can't cast otherwise. Back to what I've been saying this entire time. I don't think I should have discarded the Thraben Charm, but whatever. Discharging the Recruiter of the Guard there is just natural. It's just straight up a 2-for-1. And it's actually a weak play. But if I allow them to keep the Recruiter and they have Ephemerate or they have a Flicker Wisp or they have a bunch of things, they just gain so much value. And I just don't really think that allowing them to have that value potentially is worth, like, not getting 2-for-1. This Emperor of Bones is actually pretty bad here, but this Wear Tear is even worse. I think that we should have kept the Thraben Charm, partially because Thraben Charm hits the same things that Wear Tear is trying to hit, but it also interacts slightly better against things like Emperor of Bones. I could definitely have a Thraben Charm with this Emperor of Bones to kill it, or I could even Thraben Charm their graveyard so they don't get a Solitude out of it. I don't think that's the correct line, but it still gives me the option. I would have to like lose the Surveil here, but the Emperor of Bones is checked by the 2 tokens in play, where this Wear Tear is just most likely going to do nothing. So I think that should have kept the Thraben Charm over the Wear Tear, but this entire thing just kind of points to the idea that I think I played this game not very well. I didn't really I didn't set the hand I kept didn't set up for a good game plan for myself, even though it worked out well against my opponent's draw, and even though I drew enough removal spells or saw enough removal spells to interact to stop their snowball. I'm not entirely sure that this was a good keep. And if it was a good keep or a fine keep, I definitely shouldn't keep this Wear Tear. Outside of this, I think my opponent eating my Showdown of the Scalds here is pretty poor. I think they should hit their Recruiter to the Guard because it threatens activation with Emperor of Bones in a very punishing way for me. And I actually think I probably should have tried to kill it the following turn when it came into play or when the trigger was on the stack. Just let it be a 4/4 and just take some points of damage, because now they can just double activate and they either get a Solitude or a Recruiter. Them being at 10, their life total isn't that high. I'm pretty sure they know about this Wear Tear also because they thought seized me. There's not a lot of things they're worried about in my deck. I've used both my Surveil lands, and I'm bricking kind of hard. If this Recruiter to the Guard gets underneath the Emperor and they can activate it, I'm in a lot of danger. So I have to move at some point, and at the end of it, they either get a Solitude and can attack better, or at least they get a 4/4 Emperor of Bones and can start racing me when they know I have nothing. So that they're being very passive, but at the same time, they're not leveraging their passiveness. They're not forcing me to waste my resources. They are just wasting a lot of value, and they have 4 cards in their hand. So I'm a little confused as to what they could have here. I assume some of it is spot removal, and they don't want to play spot removal into the bombardment. But at the same time, if they have spot removal, they can actually just like leverage the use of this Emperor of Bones if they want to. And this is punishing for them because they only have 1 black source. So they actually can't double activate this Emperor of Bones here also when they have Fatal Push. The other thing is they have 3 cards. If one of them's Fatal Push and they want to activate this Emperor of Bones, yeah. So like they have to have like Phalias or other cheap cards in order to actually have plays that like are good for them in these turns. And this is like a huge sequencing error out of my opponent, and one of the reasons why like I think that again targeting the Recruiter to the Guard is much better, but also I think that they mismanaged a lot of their resources. And we did also, but I think we should be a lot farther behind. And how do I put this? Let's say they target the Recruiter Guard with Emperor Bones and they have 5 mana, right? They still have a Fatal Push and Thalia in their hand. If they just let the Guide of Souls resolve, right? And I go to put the counters on one of the tokens, they can go to 7. I think that's fine. If they're that worried about going to 7 against one of the tokens with a bombardment in play, they can Fatal Push it. But flashing in the Thalia is pretty loose because I'm less likely to be attacking with the second token if I fly the first one. Pushing the Guide of Souls makes sense, but you don't have to do it then. You can push the token and then try to leverage the Emperor of Bones with the Solitude underneath it. All of that being said, with the Guide of Souls on the stack, if the Recruiter of the Guard is underneath the Emperor of Bones and they just activate the Emperor of Bones and I go to kill it with the tokens, I now no longer have a board presence, so the Guide of Souls is a lot worse. It's also still on the stack. If they don't want the Emperor of Bones to die, they can just activate it again and just find any card in their deck if they have Recruiter the Guard underneath, right? This is plus a card. It's plus a lot of value. It could be another Solitude. It could be an Aven, whatever. It could be another Flicker Wisp to flick their land and kill my bombardment, giving them a little bit more breathing room so they don't die. They don't put this Phalia into play, but unless they have a follow-up with Overlord, the Phalia is actually not very good. The other thing is, we still have this Wear Tear. They know about this Wear Tear. So this Overlord actually isn't, it's going to get them a card. It's going to get them a card back. But it's actually not going to do as much of it as it could. So losing the card with Emperor of Bones to put Phalia into play and cast the Fatal Push actually is very punishing. They use the 2 cards in their hand, but they lose at least a card and potential many more cards for abyssing this Emperor of Bones. And even then they already have 3 other cards in their hand now that they can't cast, or they aren't casting on 5 mana. What could that be at this point in the game where you're not casting these things? So it has to be like other spot removal, Wrath of the Skies, other Phalias, maybe a Bowmaster, maybe an Aven, but you have so many dead cards. Do you want to try to exchange some value here somewhere? And this game has been very odd because I think that my hand isn't very good or wasn't very good, and I even mismanaged my resources, but my opponent isn't punishing me for it, and I don't really understand what game plan they're trying to do here. It seems like every single turn it changes a bit. Like at one point, Emperor of Bones was very punishing for me, but they never tried to punish me with Emperor of Bones. Or Phalia could have been very punishing to me, but they never had a follow-up. Here, we have Wrath of the Skies, and it's just straight up a 2-for-1 for them. Like, they just actually 2-for-1 themselves for some reason. I don't know what their 3 cards are where they need to do that. You know what I mean? If they do Wrath of the Skies there as a 2-for-1, it is very awkward. It probably means that they have another one. If I had to guess, I think the first one usually means that they have a second one if they're like 2-for-1ing themselves. But as we watch here, they don't. I don't want to dig too much. I don't think I played this game very well, but I definitely think I should have lost it for sure. I definitely think that this is not a game that I should have. I win it. We end up winning the event, and like I said, I mismanaged my resources. I played into their spells. I had a dead card in my hand for a long time, and I got lucky and drew a Pyro out of it. But I also think my opponent mismanaged their resources quite a bit also, and played into a lot of my spells and a lot of just like onboard tricks, and ended up kind of throwing away a bit of a game here when I think they definitely could have won. But anyways, that is match 2 of Boros versus